Jasper had it all, a mansion worth millions and a facade of wealth that made his heart feel empty. But when the clock struck midnight on his 40th birthday, he stripped off his tailored suit and slipped into rags, mingling with the very people he once scorned. He thought he could play the part of a humble man, but the maid, with her watchful eyes and quiet resolve, saw through his charade. In a twist of fate, she revealed his secret to the world, exposing the truth behind his lies and shattering his carefully constructed life. My name is Jasper. I thought I could hide, but now I am truly seen. The truth had laid itself bare before me, a raw and jagged wound that throbbed in the daylight. I had imagined all the ways my life could shift, but nothing prepared me for the sting of exposure. Ruth's eyes had held an honesty that was almost blinding, and as I stood there, stripped of my pretenses, I felt a strange sense of liberation mixed with terror. The weight of my father's expectations hung over me like a storm cloud, and I could feel his disapproval even from a distance. He had always believed in hard work and ambition, two things I had hoped to escape by donning this disguise. But now, everything felt tangled in a web of my own making. Ruth had fled from my revelation, her footsteps echoing down the dimly lit hallway as I grappled with the fallout. My heart raced, each beat amplifying the realization that I was now alone, my carefully curated world crumbling around me. The reality of my situation sank in as I paced the small room I had rented. The faded wallpaper, peeling at the edges, seemed to mirror my own unraveling sense of self. I had wanted authenticity, but I had not anticipated that the truth would hurt so deeply. As I pondered my next move, thoughts of Ruth surfaced like a lifeline in murky waters. She had shown me kindness when I had least expected it, treating me as an equal rather than a facade. I recalled how she laughed with her fellow maids, her spirit shining through the drudgery of their work. She had a warmth that drew me in, encouraging me to shed the armor I had worn for so long. But now that warmth was tinged with betrayal, and I couldn't help but wonder if she would ever speak to me again. My mind wandered to Agnes, Ruth's mother, a woman who had always been supportive despite life's hardships. I had seen the bond between them, the way Ruth would light up at her mother's words of encouragement. I remembered passing them one afternoon in the market, watching as they shared a moment of laughter over something trivial. It made me question my own relationship with Harold, my father, who had never offered me that same sense of belonging. In his world, emotions were weaknesses, and I had been molded to fit that vision of strength. Yet here I was, feeling more vulnerable than ever, with all my riches feeling like a burden rather than a blessing. Suddenly, a knock on the door broke my reverie. I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to face anyone after what had happened. I opened it slowly, revealing Ruth, her expression a mix of anger and sorrow. "You lied to me," she said, her voice steady yet filled with hurt. There was no trace of the warmth I had come to cherish, only the coldness of betrayal. I opened my mouth to explain, to unravel the twisted motivations behind my actions, but the words caught in my throat. "Why? Why would you want to pretend to be someone you're not?" she pressed, her eyes narrowed. I could see the way she fought against the emotions threatening to spill forth. "You could have just been yourself. Why did you have to hide?" Her questions struck me like arrows, piercing through the defenses I had built around my heart. I had hidden my true self in the pursuit of understanding what life was like for those without privilege, but now that quest felt hollow. I swallowed hard, trying to find the courage to admit my fears, to share the reality that had driven me to this point. "I thought that if I experienced life as you do, I would find meaning," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But now I realize I've only caused pain." Ruth's expression softened for a fraction of a second, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. She stepped back, creating distance between us that felt insurmountable. "You have no idea what it's like," she replied, her voice low. I work every day to keep my family afloat, to make sure we have enough to eat. You think pretending to be poor is a game, but for me, it's survival. I felt a lump in my throat. I had never considered the weight of those words. My desire to experience authenticity had come from a place of privilege, a wish to escape the shadows of my father's empire. But Ruth was living the reality I had sought to understand, and I had disrespected that struggle by trying to wear her shoes without knowing the path they had tread. "I'm sorry," I managed to say, the words feeling inadequate. "I never intended to hurt you or anyone else. I wanted to know what it was like to connect with people beyond their wealth." She shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "Connection isn't built on deception. It's forged through honesty, through shared experiences and mutual respect." She turned to leave, but something inside me snapped awake. I couldn't let her walk away without trying to salvage what was left of our fragile bond. "Ruth, please," I called out, my voice rising in desperation. "If you'll give me a chance, I want to make this right. I want to help you and your family. I want to understand what it means to truly support one another." She paused at the door, glancing back at me, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of the warmth that had initially drawn me to her. "You really want to help?" "Yes," I replied, feeling a surge of sincerity. "I want to be a part of your world, but this time with the truth." I can no longer hide behind a mask. Ruth considered my words, her brow furrowing as she weighed her options. The air felt charged between us, a fragile bridge slowly being constructed from the ruins of our misunderstanding. I held my breath, hoping she would see the earnestness in my eyes and choose to step forward onto that bridge. Ruth's gaze dropped to her hands, which were calloused from years of hard work, yet they still held a softness that spoke of her nurturing spirit. "You think you can just drop your secrets and everything will be fine?" she finally asked, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, the very same wheels that had likely carried her through countless struggles to support her family. The weight of my confession hung heavily in the air, but I knew I had to be honest with her, even if the truth threatened to shatter the fragile connection we had built. "I know it won't be easy," I replied, my heart racing. "But if I'm truly going to live authentically, I need to share all of me, including my past." The moment felt monumental. With every word I spoke, I felt the weight of my privilege clashing against my desire for genuine connection. I had built walls around myself, a fortress of wealth and expectation, yet here was Ruth, a beacon of warmth and understanding, challenging me to let go of that facade. She raised her eyes to meet mine, and I could see a flicker of hope dancing within her, fighting against the doubts that clung to her like shadows. "What if your truth only brings more pain?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I sensed the concern not just for herself, but for the implications my revelation could have on her life and her family's. "Then I'll face it," I said resolutely, "but I can't keep pretending. You deserve to know who I really am, just as I want to know who you are beneath your own burdens." The honesty in my voice seemed to pierce through the air, and for a moment, the world around us faded. We stood on the precipice of something profound, and I could feel the earth shifting beneath us. Ruth took a deep breath, her resolve solidifying. "All right then, but first, you need to understand what my life is like." There was a fire in her voice now, a spark ignited by my willingness to be open. "I work hard to take care of my mother and myself. Every penny I earn matters, and I can't afford to get hurt by someone who plays games." Her candor was refreshing, and it mirrored my own yearning for truth. "Trust me," I urged. "I have no intention of playing games. I want to know about your life, your struggles, everything. I want to understand." The earnestness in my tone seemed to draw her in, and I could see the caution in her eyes slowly fading away, replaced by a glimmer of curiosity. "Okay," Ruth said, her shoulders relaxing slightly, "but you must promise to be honest in return." I nodded vigorously, grateful for her willingness to open up. Over the next hour, Ruth unfolded her life story, detailing the daily challenges she faced. She spoke of her mother, Agnes, who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet while battling her own demons. I listened intently, absorbing her words as she describes the nights spent studying by candlelight, the weight of responsibility resting heavily on her young shoulders. Each anecdote painted a vivid picture of resilience and strength, a stark contrast to the sheltered existence I had grown accustomed to. As she spoke, I couldn't help but feel a deep admiration for Ruth. Her humility, her tenacity, it was all so real and grounding. I began to see how my own life, filled with privilege and expectations, paled in comparison to the richness of her experiences. Ruth's laughter, even when tinged with sadness, brought warmth to the chill that had settled in my heart. I found myself wanting to protect that laughter, to shield her from the pain of the world, even if just for a moment. When she paused, gathering her thoughts, I took the opportunity to share my story. I spoke of my father, Harold, a man driven by ambition and the belief that wealth equaled success. The tension in my voice was palpable as I recounted the years of feeling like a pawn in his grand game, molded to fit his vision rather than my own. I admitted how I felt suffocated by expectations and how my wealth had isolated me from authentic connections. I thought that if I could escape all that, I might find something real, I confessed, the weight of my words pressing down on me. But I realize now that hiding only leads to more isolation. You've shown me a glimpse of what it means to truly connect, to share burdens and joys alike. The realization struck me that while I had sought authenticity, I had also underestimated the depth of connection that could exist between two seemingly different worlds. Ruth's expression softened, and I could see the wheels in her mind turning again, not in doubt this time, but in understanding. "Maybe we both have more to learn from each other than we thought," she said thoughtfully. "Your life may seem different from mine, but we both know struggle in our own ways." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the window, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Our stories, once so disparate, were slowly intertwining, revealing the threads of humanity that connected us. I realized that what I had been searching for wasn't simply connection, but the understanding that we all carry our own burdens, regardless of wealth or status. "I want to help you," I said suddenly, my voice stronger than before. "If there's anything I can do to support you and your mother, I want to be there." Ruth looked taken aback by my offer, the surprise evident in her eyes. "You don't have to do that," she replied, her tone cautious but intrigued. "I appreciate the thought. But I've always managed." "Let me be a part of your world, Ruth," I insisted, feeling a sense of determination rise within me. "I can't stand by while you and your mother struggle." For a moment, silence enveloped us, heavy with the weight of unspoken possibilities. I could see Ruth grappling with my offer, weighing her independence against the warmth of connection I extended. In that instant, I knew that our journey had only just begun, and whatever lay ahead would challenge us both, but also bring us closer together. In this fragile moment of understanding, the barriers that had once defined us began to dissolve. We were no longer just a wealthy man and a humble maid. We were two souls navigating the complexities of life, ready to face whatever challenges awaited us, together. If you enjoyed this continuation of the story and want to read more about Jasper and Ruth's journey, consider subscribing for further updates and insights. As I stood there, letting the weight of Ruth's revelation settle over me, I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet. The truth she shared about her past was a jagged piece of glass that cut deep, reflecting the realities of both our lives in harsh clarity. Her words echoed in my mind, intertwining with the burdens I carried from my own upbringing. I realized that while I had masked my pain beneath layers of wealth and pretense, Ruth had faced her struggles head-on, with grace and resilience. I could not help but admire her unwavering spirit. It fueled my desire to dive deeper into our connection, Yet I also felt a pang of guilt for the deception I had lived. Our conversation soon transformed from light banter to a shared exploration of our hopes and fears. Each day that I spent in her company, I found myself peeling back the layers of my carefully constructed facade, inching closer to the truth that I had buried for so long. Ruth's honesty made it easier for me to confront the daunting reality of my own estrangement from Harold. Every mention of family ignited a flicker of resentment in my heart, but also a longing to reconnect. With Ruth as my anchor, I began to question whether I could bridge that chasm. Could I truly face my father, the man who had molded me into the person I thought I should be, rather than the person I wanted to be? One evening, while we were cleaning up after dinner, I caught a glimpse of Ruth's mother, Agnes, through the kitchen window. She was tending to her modest garden, her silhouette framed by the fading light of dusk. I had heard Ruth speak fondly of her, often highlighting her strength and dedication. It dawned on me how deeply intertwined our lives had become. I admired Agnes from a distance, recognizing that she was a strong woman who had fought her own battles, just like Ruth and I. I felt an overwhelming urge to reach out, to ask Agnes for guidance, but fear held me back. What could a wealthy man possibly say to a single mother working hard to support her family? The next day, I found myself restless, distracted by thoughts of my father. I knew he would be looking for me, determined to pull me back into his world of power and influence. I was torn, caught between the life I had known and the life I wanted to build with Ruth. If Harold found me here, masquerading as someone I was not, would he recognize the man he once scorned? Or would he only see the disappointment of a son who dared to turn his back on family expectations? Ruth noticed my unease and asked what was bothering me. I hesitated, grappling with the decision of whether to share my fears. But as I looked into her kind eyes, I realized that keeping secrets would only distance us. I took a deep breath and revealed my thoughts about Harold, my complicated feelings about our relationship, and the looming confrontation I dreaded. To my surprise, Ruth listened intently, nodding as I spoke, offering her own insights and comfort. She shared stories of her mother's struggles, the sacrifices Agnes had made for her, and how they had ultimately strengthened their bond. Her words resonated deeply within me, and I realized that the principles of family were not defined solely by blood, but also by love and understanding. Ruth's unwavering support ignited a flicker of hope. Perhaps confronting my father didn't have to be a dark and stormy affair. Maybe it could be an opportunity for reconciliation and growth. Inspired by her strength, I resolved to seek him out, to find some closure, regardless of the outcome. Days turned into weeks, and the anticipation of that inevitable confrontation loomed over me like a dark cloud. I tried to remain present in my time with Ruth, savoring each moment we shared. Our laughter filled the spaces in my heart that had long been vacant, and the warmth of her presence offered a refuge from the chaos of my thoughts. One afternoon, as we strolled through the park, I watched as children played and families picnicked. I turned to Ruth, and in that moment, I imagined a future, one filled with love and laughter, where we would create our own family, free from the burdens of our pasts. But just as I felt the tendrils of hope entwining around my heart, the reality of Harold's influence crashed down on me. I received a message from him, an ultimatum wrapped in the guise of concern. He demanded my return to the family estate, emphasizing the importance of the upcoming board meeting, a pivotal event for his business. It was a stark reminder that even in my disguise, I could not escape the machinations of my father. I felt the familiar pull of obligation and loyalty, but alongside it, an urge to assert my independence. I shared Harold's message with Ruth, and she watched me with a mix of concern and encouragement. "You must decide what you truly want, Jasper," she said, her voice soft yet unwavering. "You have the power to choose your path, and you don't have to walk it alone." Her faith in me sparked a flicker of determination, and I realized that the path to authenticity would require more than just facing Harold. It would mean embracing my identity, both as the man I was born and the man I chose to become. In the following days, I wrestled with my decision, torn between two worlds that felt increasingly at odds. Yet, as I reflected on Ruth's unwavering support, I began to see the outlines of a plan taking shape. I would confront Harold, but on my terms, not as the son he expected, but as the man I had become through my friendship with Ruth. I wanted to embody the principles I had learned from her: compassion, honesty, and the strength to embrace vulnerability. With my heart resolute, I decided that my next step would be to reach out to Harold and request a meeting. I needed to lay the groundwork for our conversation, to establish that I had changed and that I was no longer just a reflection of his expectations. The journey ahead would not be easy, but I felt empowered knowing that I had Ruth by my side, ready to face the storms together. Whatever the outcome, I was ready to embrace the truth of my life and forge a future that honored both my past and the love that was blossoming in my heart. I took a deep breath, letting the weight of my decision sink in. This was the moment I had waited for, a chance to confront Harold not just as a son, but as a man who had learned through his journey with Ruth the value of honesty. I envisioned her encouragement, the way her unwavering support had shown me the power of vulnerability. I was not merely the wealthy heir he had molded me to be. I had discovered my own voice, one that resonated with integrity and compassion. The thought of our conversation filled me with a mixture of anticipation and fear. I could no longer hide behind the facade of wealth that had suffocated me for so long. With each step toward Harold's office, my resolve solidified. I had decided I would no longer allow his expectations to dictate my life. I had spent countless nights reflecting on my childhood, on how my father's ambition had overshadowed my own dreams. It was time to reclaim my narrative. As I entered the imposing office, the air felt thick with unspoken words. Harold sat behind an enormous desk, his stern expression revealing nothing of the man I used to know. The air crackled with tension as I approached, my heart racing. "Jasper," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made my stomach churn. "You're back from your experiment, I see." There was a hint of disdain in his tone, as if he believed my time away had been nothing more than a trivial distraction. I squared my shoulders, determined not to let his words shake me. "Actually, I've been doing some thinking," I replied, striving to keep my voice steady. "I want to talk about what happened between us." His brow furrowed slightly, but he remained silent, allowing me to continue. "I realize now that I have lived under your shadow for too long. I need to forge my own path, and that includes being honest with myself and those around me." The silence that followed felt deafening, the tension growing thicker than before. "Is this about that girl?" he finally asked, disdain dripping from each word. I felt my pulse quicken. I didn't want to discuss Ruth with him, not yet. This was about me reclaiming my identity, not about the woman who had shown me what it meant to care for others. But I couldn't ignore the truth that Ruth had become an integral part of my transformation. "Ruth has opened my eyes to a world I had closed myself off from," I admitted, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "She's shown me the power of kindness and authenticity. I can't just dismiss that." "Don't let some maid manipulate your thoughts, Jasper," he snapped, his tone sharp as a knife. "You're better than this. You have a legacy to uphold." His words stung, but they also fueled my determination. I refused to be a pawn in his game any longer. "I want to build my own legacy, one that aligns with who I truly am," I shot back. "Your legacy has always been about power and control. I want to embrace connection and compassion." The room fell silent as his expression shifted from disbelief to something akin to anger. I could see the battle within him, his desire to protect his image clashing with the realization that he was losing his grip on me. "Do you think this will end well for you?" he asked, his voice lowering to a threatening whisper. "You'll find yourself alone and destitute." I met his gaze with newfound confidence, ready to stand firm in my convictions. I'd rather be alone and authentic than surrounded by false pretenses. I've already tasted the bitter emptiness of wealth without meaning. The tension in the room shifted. I could see the struggle in his eyes as he tried to process my words. "You're a fool if you think you can simply walk away from this life," he finally replied, though his voice lacked the conviction it once held. "Everything you have is a result of my hard work." "And everything I am is because of my own choices," I asserted. "I want to make my own decisions, not ones dictated by your ambitions." The raw honesty in my voice hung in the air, and for a moment we stood as two men facing each other, stripped of titles and expectations. "Do you think I wanted to be like this?" he questioned, vulnerability creeping into his tone. "I've spent my entire life trying to build something meaningful, and all I see is you throwing it away." A fleeting sense of understanding washed over me, but I quickly pushed it aside. I could empathize with his struggles, but I could no longer be tethered to his vision for my life. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing a different path," I said firmly. "If you can't accept that, then maybe we need to reevaluate our relationship." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths, a chasm widening between father and son. I had expected anger, but what I saw in Harold's eyes was a flicker of fear, the fear of losing me for good. "You're making a mistake," he warned, but even he seemed to recognize the shift in our dynamic. "I'm just trying to find my own way," I replied softly, searching for a trace of hope in his steely demeanor. "I hope one day you can understand that." With that, I turned to leave, feeling the weight of the conversation lift slightly from my shoulders. I knew this was only the beginning, a small step in a much longer journey toward reconciliation. As I walked away, the image of Ruth filled my thoughts. Her laughter, her kindness, the way she had taught me to see the world differently. I wanted to bring her into my future, to share this newfound understanding with her. Outside Harold's office, I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was quickly tempered by the reality of my situation. Though I had taken a monumental step toward reclaiming my identity, there were still obstacles ahead, and I needed Ruth by my side as I navigated this tumultuous journey. I made my way to the modest little apartment we shared, my heart swelling with anticipation of seeing her. I hoped that together we could face whatever challenges lay ahead, creating a life rich in authenticity, compassion, and love. As I approached our apartment, the familiar scent of warm bread wafting through the door reminded me of simpler times, moments when the world felt less complicated. I pushed the door open, the gentle creak of the hinges echoing my mixed emotions. There she was, Ruth, her apron slightly dusted with flour, her hair tied back in a messy bun that framed her radiant face. She looked up from the small kitchen table where she had been rolling out dough, and her eyes lit up with the warmth that made the weight on my shoulders feel just a bit lighter. "Jasper, you're back earlier than I expected," she exclaimed, wiping her hands on her apron and moving toward me. Her genuine smile was an anchor in the storm of confusion swirling inside me. I could see the pride in her demeanor and the strength she exuded, qualities that always drew me closer to her. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me, letting the chaos of the outside world fade into silence. "I wanted to talk," I said, trying to sound casual, though my heart raced at the thought of revealing my plans. "There's something we need to discuss." Ruth's expression shifted slightly, a hint of concern flashing across her face. "Is everything all right? You seem intense." Taking a deep breath, I took a seat across from her at the table. "It's about my father," I began, and I could see her brow furrow as she listened intently, her hands resting on the table as if bracing for something heavy. "He's been trying to pull me back into his world, using our old ties to pressure me into compliance." My voice trembled, but I pressed on. "He doesn't understand what I've learned during this time of living simply. He thinks wealth is everything." Ruth nodded, her empathy palpable. "People often don't see beyond what they have. They equate their worth with material possessions." I watched her, marveling at how much insight she had despite her own struggles. You've taught me that, Ruth. I thought riches would fulfill me, but I find myself craving connection and honesty much more. I'm glad to hear that, she said softly. But how do you plan to confront him? He seems like a formidable force. By being honest about who I am now. He needs to know that I won't go back to living a life dictated by expectations and wealth, I asserted, my resolve strengthening. But I can't do it alone. I need your support. Her eyes widened slightly, and I felt a rush of hope. Of course, I'll be here for you. Whatever you need, we'll face it together. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine, feeling the warmth radiate between us. It was a simple gesture, but it seemed to solidify our bond further, making me feel less alone in this daunting challenge. As we sat together, discussing our next steps, I could sense Ruth's unwavering belief in me. It was something I had never experienced with my father, who viewed vulnerability as a weakness. I realized that Ruth's support came not from pity, but from a genuine desire to see me reclaim my life. Suddenly, a thought struck me, and I hesitated for a moment. Ruth, you mentioned earlier that you've had your own struggles with your family. Is there something you haven't told me? The question lingered in the air, and I could see her considering whether to share more of herself with me. I guess I've been holding back, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. My mother, Agnes, has sacrificed so much for me. She's worked multiple jobs to keep us afloat, and sometimes I feel guilty for wanting more than what we have. It's as if I'm betraying her hard work by dreaming of a different life. Ruth, your dreams aren't a betrayal. They're part of who you are, I reassured her, squeezing her hand. If anything, you deserve every bit of happiness and success that life has to offer. Her expression softened, and I could see the conflict within her begin to dissolve. You're right, but it's easier said than done. I worry about disappointing her. Have you talked to her about your dreams? I asked, urging her to open up further. She sighed deeply, her gaze drifting to the window where the fading sunlight painted the room in a warm glow. Not really. I guess I've been afraid of what she might say. What if she thinks I'm being ungrateful? I leaned in closer, my voice low and earnest. You won't know until you try. You owe it to yourself and to her to share how you feel. She loves you, and I believe she'll want what's best for you, even if it means embracing change. Ruth met my eyes, a flicker of determination igniting within her. You're right. I need to be brave too, not just for myself, but for her. She deserves to know that I want more than this. As we shared our thoughts and fears, I felt a profound connection building between us, one rooted in authenticity and shared aspirations. It became clear that our journeys, though unique, were intertwined. Together, we could confront our pasts, face the challenges ahead, and carve out a future filled with hope and love. Let's promise to be there for each other, I said, feeling a surge of emotion. No more hiding who we truly are. We face the world together. Ruth nodded, a smile breaking across her face, illuminating the room like the sun breaking through clouds. Together. That simple word resonated deeply within me, echoing the strength of our commitment to one another. As we began to plan how to approach my father, I couldn't help but feel that no matter what came next, we were ready to embrace it side by side. If you have moments in your life where support and connection changed everything, I invite you to share your stories. Let's create a tapestry of experiences that remind us of the power of love and understanding. As Ruth and I sat in the dim light of the small cafe, I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but my mind was elsewhere, consumed by the looming confrontation with my father. Harold's stern presence had always been like a shadow over my life, suffocating any sense of freedom I sought. The thought of him discovering my true identity sent chills down my spine, but Ruth's unwavering support grounded me. Her gentle smile reminded me that I was not alone in this journey. I believe in you, she said softly, her eyes sparkling with a quiet determination that seemed to radiate warmth. You deserve to stand up for what you want, Jasper. This is your life. Her words wrapped around me like a comforting blanket, and I realized that this woman, who had entered my life unexpectedly, was becoming my anchor in turbulent waters. As I took a deep breath, I recalled the first time we met. I had been wandering the streets, feeling lost in a world where pretense was the norm. Ruth had been cleaning the pavement near the park, her hands worn yet graceful, and she had greeted me with genuine kindness. I had been captivated by her spirit, so full of life despite her circumstances. It was in that brief encounter that I found a flicker of hope, igniting a desire to forge a connection that transcended the boundaries imposed by social status. Days turned into weeks, and our friendship blossomed amidst the mundane routines of life. I learned about her struggles and dreams, and in return, I shared pieces of my past, though I carefully shielded the truth of my wealth. Each conversation stripped away layers of my facade, revealing a longing for authenticity that I had buried deep within. Ruth's laughter became a melody I cherished, a sound that drowned out the dissonance of my secret life. With each passing moment, my resolve to confront my father grew stronger. I could no longer allow fear to dictate my actions. I envisioned standing in front of Harold, his piercing gaze boring into me as I declared my desire to be free from his control. But the fear of his disapproval loomed large, threatening to suffocate the courage I had built alongside Ruth. "Remember, you are not defined by him," Ruth reminded me, sensing my internal struggle. "You are capable of making your own choices." Her faith in me was an elixir, invigorating my spirit and rekindling the fire of determination within. I nodded, grateful for the reassurance she offered. Finally, the day arrived when I had to face my father. My heart raced as I approached his imposing office building, a structure that felt more like a fortress than a workplace. The glass facade reflected the man I once was, the wealthy heir trapped in a gilded cage. I took a deep breath, recalling Ruth's words, and stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and ambition. Harold sat behind a large mahogany desk, his brows furrowed in concentration as he reviewed documents. When he looked up and met my gaze, I felt the familiar chill seep into my bones. "Jasker," he said, his voice steady but lacking warmth. "What brings you here?" "Father, I need to talk to you," I began, my voice wavering slightly. He gestured for me to sit, and I hesitated for a moment before taking a seat across from him. "I've been doing some thinking about my life and what I want." His expression darkened, and a tightness gripped the air between us. "You want to discuss your future, do you?" he asked, an edge creeping into his tone. "I've worked hard to build this empire. You should be grateful for the opportunities I've provided." "Opportunities?" I echoed, feeling a surge of defiance. "Father, I've lived a life dictated by your expectations. I'm not content just being a cog in your machine. I want to find my own path." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "And what path is that? A life of mediocrity? Living in the shadows?" "No," I said firmly, shaking my head. "A life where I can be true to myself. I've spent too long hiding, pretending to be someone I'm not." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks as I recalled Ruth's unwavering belief in me. I want to make my own choices, to pursue what truly matters. For a moment, Harold was silent, his expression unreadable. I could sense a storm brewing behind his stoic facade, and I braced myself for his reaction. "This is absurd," he finally said, his voice rising. "You think you can just throw everything away? You have a responsibility to this family." "No, Father," I shot back, my voice trembling with conviction. "I have a responsibility to myself. I deserve to live my truth, not yours." The words tumbled out, a culmination of all the pent-up emotions I had carried for so long. As the tension in the room escalated, I thought of Ruth, of the life she fought for, and of the dreams she shared with me. In that moment, I realized that it was not just my future at stake, it was a chance to redefine my relationship with my father, to carve out a space where I could exist authentically. Harold's face turned a shade of crimson, and I could almost see the gears turning in his mind. "You will regret this," he warned, his voice low and menacing. "Perhaps," I replied, my heart racing, "but I'm willing to take that risk if it means finding my own way." As I spoke those words, I felt the shackles of my past begin to loosen, replaced by the exhilarating sense of liberation. I stood up, my pulse pounding in my ears, and turned to leave. In that moment, I was no longer just the wealthy son of a businessman. I was a man ready to embrace the unknown, a journey that would lead me toward Ruth, toward authenticity, and toward a life built on my own terms.